Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm really excited you're here. I'm trying out a new system, so bear with me as I learn how to record these videos and share information with you. So, today I wanted to talk about the real estate market and what things actually impact the market. Whether you're selling your home, you're buying a home, you're trying to buy an investment property, trying to go from short-term rental to long-term rental or vice versa. There's four major things that impact the real estate market. Almost hands down, any one of these four things will dictate how the market's going to go. So let's get to it. I'm going to switch over here. I'm pretty excited about this because I can just boom, I got a slide up for you. So the first one we're going to talk about is demographics. Now, this is just like, where are people living? Where are people moving to? I'm going to just talk a little bit about the baby boomers because they started retiring around 2010. So what that did is they were selling off the bigger homes, they were downsizing, and then, younger people weren't necessarily buying those homes. So there had to be kind of some alternative solutions for those large homes that maybe weren't really working for, the younger generation, wanted to have a smaller family and that kind of thing. People leaving areas. And I'm just going to pick on California because they've been in the news a lot, but a lot of people have been leaving California, and there was a recent poll done, and like 40% of the people that are still living there said that they want to move out. And where are they moving to? Well, they're moving to Texas, Nevada, Arizona. And so that creates a good market here for us. I'm in the Texas market, the Dallas Fort Worth. California, not so much. And then, since the pandemic, we've all, had the pleasure of working from home, which is awesome. And so then that's kind of changed the landscape too of the market. People can pretty much, if they can continue to work remotely, they can live anywhere. They can, move to areas where housing's a little bit more affordable. So let's go on to the next info about what's the next thing that affects the markets. And of course, it's the interest rate. And right now we're seeing some, I wouldn't say record high because, a long time ago, some of you might not remember, but I can remember buying a house and the interest rate was like 12 and 13%. So, having it at like the 6, 7, 8% mark is not really shocking to me. As an investor, I always do pay more interest rate than if I just buy, my homestead. But the lower the interest rate, the more buying power you have. And the higher the interest rate, the less. So just as a quick little example, I just said, okay, if you had a $300,000 mortgage and it was at like 2.5% for 30 years, your payment would be just a little under $1,200. But if the interest rate was like 6.5, then your payment's going to be almost $1,900. Okay, that's kind of a jump. That's like $750 jump. So if your wages didn't keep up with that, right? So you make the same amount of money, but now you want to buy a house and, to get the same, probably even the same square footage, maybe you have to move to a different location, you're going to pay more for that house. So that's like a 25% increase of a house payment. So most people are not getting a 25% increase in what they make, right? That's just not really happening. So it's causing a problem where, it's causing the market to slow down a little bit, not all the way, but it is slowing down a bit, and it does have an impact. And then of course the economy, when things aren't good, people don't really, go around and buying second homes and that kind of thing. Investors are, so we're still buying houses. Actually, it's a great time to buy long-term rentals. But the interest rates I've already talked about, and then just the cost of everything. And I'm not just talking about when you go to the store and get your eggs, milk, and bread, that's expensive enough. But what about the price of just materials like wood? Oh my goodness, it's gone up so much. I think it came back down a little bit, but everything costs so much now. Like if you're building or you want to renovate something, have you priced out how much to add a pool to your home? So my daughter did, and she got a quote of just getting a hole in the ground, for about 80 grand. That didn't include all the decking and whatnot. So, and in Texas, you got to be super careful. You can't go with the cheapest because we have foundation issues here. So you got to go with a really reputable pool company. And then there's labor shortages. If you're flipping homes, if you're trying to renovate, finding good contractors that stay around a challenge anyway. And in this market, it's a little bit harder. So that all kind of has an effect on affordable housing. Rents are crazy high right now. Um, so it's hard for people to like find affordable housing, whether they're renting or buying. And here in Texas, we have the good old property taxes. So, excuse me, little hair there. And so our property taxes are like crazy high. And because the home values have gone up, why? Because some of those folks, as I mentioned, that moved from California helped to, push the prices of houses up. So, we have a lot of property taxes here, and they can get quite expensive. And then let's talk a little, not about politics, but let's talk about government policies. All right. So, probably the biggest one that everybody can relate to is the pandemic. So, if you owned rental property, if you were a tenant, that was some different kinds of things that went on that we weren't used to. As a landlord, it would be hard that your tenant wasn't paying rent, right? And there was a lot of government programs and that kind of thing. So, there's always programs for first time home buyers. The IRS sets what kind of deductions we're going to get. Investing with a self directed IRA is one of my specialties. And so there's some rumbles that there might be some changes to that. So right now there hasn't been any, but there's some rumbles that could change. And, it's not just on a federal level, but also local. So here in Dallas, we just went through, the city council decided to ban short term rentals. That has an impact on a lot of people here. Lease restrictions in different areas. The neighborhood I live in, they actually, a couple years ago, now this was HOA, so it's not really city, but it impacts, renting. So they came in and said, hey, only 10% of the homes in the subdivision can be rentals. So, HOA is not the same, and you can fight that a little bit easier. And then, of course, property taxes, that's kind of dictates how much it's going to cost you to have that property. I talked a little bit about the eviction moratorium, which we all experienced, but some places continued it even after the federal moratorium was listed. There were some spots, Dallas County, that continued. If you tried to evict someone for non-payment of rent, yeah, you would. I had a lot of friends that went to eviction court and got turned down. So so that's an example of a policy that's impacting the real estate market. So those are just some of my 4 key elements, from an investing standpoint. I always say when you're looking at the market, you want to make sure that you can read the market, what is happening, and how can you take advantage of it as a real estate investor. Um, so I want to thank everybody for watching today, and I hope you like this new format. It's kind of nice to like have the info on the screen while I can still see you and pretend like you're here with me. So hey, you could really help me out by subscribing to my channel. I would really appreciate that. And if you're not following me on Instagram, please do. It's just Nancy Wallace Lobbs. I got my name right there at the bottom, and you can also find me on LinkedIn. So I hope you all have a great day. Hey, let me know what you think are some factors that affect the real estate market. I'd really like to hear from you too. Take care. Have a great day. See you soon.